You're making a huge mistake if you think all worms in your soil are doing the same job. I see gardeners constantly dumping compost, turning the soil, and assuming everything will magically thrive. What actually happens is that you disrupt a complex living system, and your soil ends up less fertile, not more. The reality is that worms operate in a structured hierarchy, a true caste system, and ignoring that system limits your yields and slows nutrient cycling. If you're serious about food production and want to see real results, you need to understand exactly how this works. Oh, and by the way, if you want faster results in your beds, I'm using VermisTerra Earthworm Castings, link in the description. And it's been a game changer in both raised beds and container gardens, so check that out after the video. Let's start with why this hierarchy matters. Not all worms are equal. You have your top-level engineer worms that burrow deeply and aerate your soil, your mid-level processor worms that handle decomposing organic matter, and the bottom-level surface scavengers that work near the top and feed primarily on fresh debris. Each caste has a role, and they interact in ways that drastically affect soil structure, microbial populations, and nutrient availability. If you mix them all indiscriminately or constantly till your beds, you break this natural order. In practical terms, that means slower plant growth, poor root penetration, and wasted fertilizer. I've experimented in raised beds, backyard plots, and even hydroponic setups, and one of the first things I noticed is that respecting worm zones gives immediate results. Deep burrowers need undisturbed soil with loose, high organic matter layers down at 12 to 18 inches. Mid-level processors thrive when you layer compost or aged leaf litter 2 to 4 inches thick on top. Surface scavengers only really work efficiently when there's a fresh, thin mulch layer on the surface. Trying to force all worms into one layer or overfeeding just leads to overcrowding and competition, which slows decomposition. Here's a practical example from my raised beds. I start by lightly loosening the soil to about 6 inches. Then I add a layer of VermisTerra Earthworm Castings, roughly a ½ pound per square foot, mixed with a tablespoon of aged leaf mold. The castings introduce essential microbes and provide instant fertility. Surface scavengers immediately get to work feeding, while the processors below start breaking down the leaf mold. The deep engineers are mostly untouched at this stage, but begin forming tunnels over the next week. Within 10 days, I see visible aeration channels, improved water infiltration, and healthier seedlings. The difference compared to beds where I just threw compost on top is night and day. Let's talk ratios, because this is where most people fail. In a typical 4 by 8 foot raised bed, I use about 2 pounds of VermisTerra castings, a 2 to 3 inch layer of partially decomposed leaf mold, and then I thinly top it with grass clippings or vegetable scraps. For container gardens, the ratio shifts slightly. 1 part worm castings to 3 parts potting mix works best. Too much casting in a small container can be overpowering because of the concentrated nutrients, but too little won't give your microbes the boost they need. The goal is balance. Feed each caste according to their natural role without overwhelming them. Hydroponic growers pay attention. Even without soil, understanding worm hierarchy principles helps if you're running systems with organic media like coco coir or compost teas. I started adding a tablespoon of castings per gallon of reservoir water, letting it steep overnight, then using that as a nutrient solution. The microbial boost is immediate, supporting root development and nutrient uptake. I've seen tomatoes and peppers in hydroponic setups respond with larger leaves and faster fruiting than conventional liquid fertilizers alone. One of the biggest misconceptions I hear is that worms are only surface-level decomposers. People spread compost, see worms working, and think that's all they do. Deep burrowers actually recycle nutrients from lower soil layers, bringing minerals up and creating channels for roots. In my backyard soil test, Beds with structured worm zones had pH stabilization, better water retention, and improved nitrogen levels just weeks after layering castings and organic matter. Without this hierarchy, nutrients stay locked in debris or leach away. Now, for maintenance and seasonal tips. Keep the surface mulch fresh but not thick enough to smother surface scavengers. About 1 inch is perfect. Water consistently, but avoid soggy conditions. Deep engineers need moisture but can't survive waterlogged tunnels. Reapply worm castings every 4 to 6 weeks in active beds or containers, especially during transplanting, flowering, or fruiting phases. For hydroponics, steep a fresh batch every week. Small doses consistently outperform big, sporadic applications. I want to emphasize a point most gardeners ignore: minimal disturbance. I've seen raised beds ruined by over-tilled soil where worms vanish for weeks. Instead of constantly flipping soil, feed the castings, mulch lightly, and let the worms do the work. Over time, the network of tunnels they build maintains soil aeration and nutrient flow without manual intervention. In my experience, you'll spend less time digging and more time harvesting heavier, healthier crops. A practical side note: not all castings are created equal. VermisTerra Earthworm Castings, the ones I use, are lab-tested, fine-textured, and low moisture. That makes them easy to spread evenly, whether in large raised beds, container mixes, or for making a worm tea concentrate. Other brands I tried had coarse chunks, higher moisture, and inconsistent microbial activity, which slowed decomposition. For serious growers, the extra quality is worth it. And again, if you want to see the specific product I use, the link is in the description. Worth checking because it really simplifies this process. Let's cover troubleshooting. If your worms aren't active, check moisture and feeding first. Too dry or overly acidic mulch will halt activity. Next, evaluate competition. Sometimes beds have too many scavengers crowding processes, slowing breakdown. Adjust organic inputs by layers: thin, fresh mulch on top for scavengers, slightly thicker, partially decomposed material below for processors. Deep engineers often just need undisturbed soil and will naturally increase in number if the upper layers are managed properly. Lastly, consider the long-term benefits of a structured worm system. With a maintained cast system, your soil becomes self-sustaining. Microbes flourish, roots grow deeper, water retention improves, and nutrients cycle efficiently. Even in small backyard plots, this approach can double yields within a season. In hydroponics, it reduces plant stress and improves resilience. And the best part? Once the system is established, you spend less time babysitting your soil and more time enjoying the results. So if you're serious about growing nutrient-dense food and want your soil to perform like it's alive, which, spoiler, it is, start thinking about worms in terms of a structured multi-level system. Layer castings and organic matter intelligently, respect their natural zones, avoid unnecessary tilling, and maintain proper moisture. Your plants will reward you with stronger growth, bigger fruit, and more consistent yields. Before we wrap up, if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button now because we share practical, field-tested gardening strategies every week. And if you want to try the VermisTerra Earthworm Castings I mentioned, the link is in the description. It's the same one I've used for raised beds, container gardens, and hydro setups. The results speak for themselves, and it's a tool you can integrate immediately. Thanks for watching, and remember, serious gardeners grow soil first, plants second. Respect your worms, structure your beds, feed intelligently, and your harvest will never be the same. Share this with anyone who's tired of mediocre yields and wants their soil to perform at its absolute best.